I want to kind of end now with like your kind of suggestions for resources, tools, apps, books, anything that you think people should definitely go through. What are they? Why should they go through them? Inshallah.
I'm glad you asked me that. But I did prepare that. So initially I wrote 3, but it expanded into 7. Alhamdulillah, it's too hard to, because I wanted to do different areas of life. Because this is the thing about time management. I don't like focusing just on efficiency,
Yeah.
just on work, right? So the first one is, I think we mentioned a few times, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you haven't read that yet, I do think it's a must read. And one of the reasons I like it is that it's quite spiritual, right? The thing about, he was a Mormon, Stephen Covey. He's quite religious. And so his book is very balanced. And there's so much, I mean, you look at the first few chapters, begin with the end in mind, first things first. You can't disagree with that, right? So alhamdulillah, it's something which is very easy to Islamicize. So 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Number 2, I've given any book by Cal Newport. So there's 3 of his books, and he's a real gem. And a lot of people in productivity circles and life coaching, they've not heard of him. He's not a huge name, but he's on the top shelves now. But he's a kind of quiet genius. He's quiet but very, very intelligent. So he wrote. Now I know you've done some kind of talked about. I don't know how much of your audience are young people. Do you get the people who are watching who are like degree students and like that age, like younger ones?
Yeah, all kinds of different ages. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a great book. I mean, I wish if I was, when I was younger, I had read this book called So Good They Can't Ignore You. Cal Newport. And this book is just like the best career book ever. And it's even good if you're late in your life, even if like you're like, a bit like me, it helped me because it's kind of like, it kind of debunks a passion hypothesis, which is like, just do what you love, which is a bit simplistic and it can be dangerous. And he talks about something called career capital and the importance, and he gives examples of Steve Jobs and all these famous, and the quotes from Steve Martin. And who's a comedian, and people see him like this amazing Hollywood actor, millionaire, whatever. But he started off like just a stand-up, and just it's amazing the graft he had to put in before he became so good they couldn't ignore him. So it's a very nuanced book, but it's really, really smart, and it's a very clever one to kind of help you. I think if you're an entrepreneur and you feel a bit of a jack of all trades, you feel like, oh, I want to do this, I'm not where I want to be, and he gives you all these amazing case studies of people who didn't know, like Steve Jobs, if he followed his passion, he'd open a Buddhist temple probably, right? And so it shows you his journey, and other people who didn't know what they were doing exactly. And the beauty of the book is that the good news is you don't have to be that clear. You don't have to know exactly what your life work's going to be. It's something you're going to discover, but you do have to keep up your career capital. That book's brilliant. His other 2 books, I mentioned Digital Minimalism. I don't need to say anything more about that. And the other one's Deep Work. And Deep Work is amazing. So that's a book which teaches all about focus. Focus is the superpower of time management and high performance. Focus. So that's all number 2, right? So it's like 3 in 1. Number 3, this is for the sisters. And I don't know if they've ever heard of Laura Vanderkam. She wrote a book called I Know How She Does It, right? And she's a journalist, and she's written another book called 148 Hours, so brothers might prefer that one. Both her books, she basically did lots and lots of time studies. Like she got lots and lots of clients, and she did lots of surveys of their weeks. And she basically got women who are, 6, 7, 8-figure businesswomen, or women who are earning very high income, but are still mothers. Some of the cases, like, mothers of 7 kids and running these multi-million businesses. Wow. Very, very inspiring. Now, we're not going to agree as Muslims, to be honest, just as a caveat. I don't agree with all her views because, their mindset's a bit different. So we got to, we do believe that men and women have roles in Islam and things like that. So, with a pinch of salt, but it's very enlightening, and it does show you. But one thing she's proven is that we have this concept that in the past women were they had better work-life balance and now she's actually shown, like, one of her findings, and it's contentious, but there's an interesting point that actually sometimes busy women, working women, and we have a lot of working sisters. I have clients, and it's a reality of our times that women often have to work. Yeah. That many working women actually have better quality time with their kids than full-time housewives.
Wow, okay.
So, for example, they spend more time reading, more time playing, right? Because sometimes busy people, as you know, can be very effective with their time. Yes. So that book's a great one to kind of look at that. That's number 3. Number 4, got to mention Health. Healthy at 100 by John Robbins. This book inspired me to quit sugar. right? So since I read that book, I never had a spoon of sugar in my
Wow.
tea.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah. And the reason I love that book is that, people who are old enough to, well, I mean, this is in the 70s, National Geographic did these articles where they talked about these famous valleys of youth in the world, right? Like there's these places in the world where people regularly live to 100, right?
Mm.
These legends, right? And then what they did, they actually sent scientists to check this out. And I didn't know about this, right? And this book documents all that in a really exciting fashion, right? So it talks about the Abkhazians in Russia, the people in Vilcabamba, Okinawa, Karate Kid country, Japan, which is the city, which is interesting, and in Pakistan, you might know the Hunza people, the Hunza
Oh,
Valley.
really? I didn't know that was one of them. Okay,
It's
amazing.
amazing. And then, so the first half of the book is so inspiring. Like you've got like these scientists. Like, I'll just give you one anecdote. Like you got these scientists who have to go up this mountain, and they're worried that their 90-year-old hosts, how are they going to kind of, they're feeling a bit, they're 50s and strong and rugged, right? How are this 90-year-old going to help them? And they're bounding up the mountain, right? Bounding up the mountain, having ice cold baths, like seeing the stars with their eyes. It's so inspiring, right? That's the first half. And then the second half of the book says, okay, how did they do it? So it's so inspiring, really, really inspiring. Just great book for anyone to read. Number 5, Toxic Childhood, right? It's about parenting by Sue Palmer. So this I knew from my teacher days. And if there's one book every parent should own or read, I believe this one is the one. Sue Palmer is a TES columnist, former she's an educator, and now she's a writer and speaker. She's written about boys as well. So Toxic Childhood, the great thing about this, she talks about basically why kids become brats, right, nowadays, right? And the nice thing about this book, she looks at several factors. She looks at marketing, really interesting stuff about marketing, how from the age of 5, 6, boys are encouraged to be like fighting and girls are encouraged to think about weight from age, really young age. She looks at food. She looks at play. She looked at childcare, really interesting aspect, which you might not have even thought about, diet. But she does it in a very pragmatic way. She talks about, so for example, with video games, she has a whole chapter on video games. She says, and TV. So she gives suggestions like, okay, if you don't want to get rid of the TV, absolutely, you have to have it in a shared place, right? If you're going to have a TV, have it in a shared. Do not allow a stranger into your kid's bedroom, right? So there's a lot of pragmatic tips like that, which are kind of in the way. They're not too extreme. They're not too hard to follow. But she highlights all the dangers in our modern society. And honestly, our parents didn't know a lot of this stuff. When they came here, they had no idea that there's a new world they came into. We're growing up in this world, and we have to be aware of these toxic elements. And if we don't learn about them, we won't even know. And I see this all the time. Parents are giving stuff to the kids, whether it's food, whether it's video games, whether it's the way they little things like when you have kids and you don't even sing to them anymore, or you just have them in a carrier and you have them facing. There's little things we do which, just because it's the latest thing we're buying, we have no idea of the implications. Because before, we never did it. Before, we just followed tradition. There's no tradition left now. Everything we do now is not traditional. Everything's just been upturned. So we have to go back and learn which things of these things are okay, can support a tradition, which things are toxic. So that book's brilliant for that. 2 more left. 6, this is for marriage. Now this is an exclusive suggestion. I was thinking, I've only told this suggestion. My own coach, my own kind of marriage coach told me this, and I've only told it to one of my clients. Should I do? And I thought, you know what? If your listeners have, how many hours is it now? If they've gone all the way to to this point to hear this, they deserve to hear this recommendation. So this is exclusive marriage book, which a lot of people don't know. It's called 8 Dates by John Gottman. Right, by Gottman, and it's clever. The Gottmans, I don't know if you've heard of them. They are like the best marriage experts in the world. One of the best. The reason being is that they made something called a love lab, right? So they created they rented out an apartment, nice apartment, and they'd get couples to come in, right, and just live there. And they just recorded. They had cameras there, and they'd have sensors on them to measure their blood pressure and things. And they just basically observed how they argued or how they spoke and got on, right? And it's so scientific. Nothing's been done like this ever in history. They got to the point where they can predict. Mr. Gottman can predict within just minutes of seeing a couple talking, whether they're going to divorce, like with 98% accuracy. He can tell if they're going to end up staying together or divorce. It's amazing. And so he's written other books, the 7 Principles of How Marriage Works. Any of his books are great. But the reason why I recommended 8 Dates, it's like a slim one. It's a short one. It's very practical. It tells you you go 8 dates, one of them, and you have deep conversations with your wife about work and money, about fun and adventure. It's amazing, right? I'm giving, for my clients, it's a game changer. And if you read that book and implement it with your spouse, And that is something I'm going to be writing about. Is like, when's the last time you had fun with your spouse? When's the last time you had an adventure together? Right? Sometimes I strongly believe, for example, that couples, we should have you should have a date night, and this is something which they do. The top executives, the non-Muslim productivity gurus, that's what they do. No matter how busy they get, they will always have a date night. And I believe in our times, it's quite important to keep that intimacy, keep that relationship strong with our wife, away from the kids, to have that time. So 8 Dates is a great book. And the final one, I started finished with an Islamic one, The Value of Time by Sheikh Abdullah Fattah Abu Ghudda. It's published by Awakening Publication, one of the few books which is actually about time management, written by a great scholar. And it's got lots of examples, Quranic ayahs, hadiths, and examples of examples of scholars who'd die reading a book and falling into a manhole. How much concern and fikr they had for time and how they valued every moment of it. So I think that's a nice one to end on if you've got an Islamic perspective as well.
Amazing. Jazakallah khair, that's wonderful. In today's time, people would fall into a manhole holding their mobile phone. That's what probably would happen,